and welcome to the Speak Freely podcast. I'm Emma Dunwell, and today I'm joined by co-founder of the National Housing Party, Patrick McGinnis. So first of all, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for inviting me. It was a very good intro. Thank you.
Thank you. So how are you doing today, first of all?
Oh, very well, actually. A bit chilly, but winter's approaching and all is good.
Yeah. So first off, for anyone that isn't aware of the National Housing Party, would you just like to give everyone an outline of what the party is and how you came to co-founding?
Yes, so the National Housing Party, we're a Christian nationalist party, and we stand in local elections. I'm in the middle of a campaign. We've got candidates in Bedford, Grimsby, Oldham. We've had candidates in Rugby, South Gloucestershire and London. And we're really focusing on the local elections because we believe that the only way we're going to change things to make our country better is from the bottom upwards, and that's the start of that is local elections. So we've got about 35 policies on our website, and I'm just going to read out a few of the important ones which are very important to us. And the first one is we want to stop permanent settlement immigration and deport all illegals. Also stop accepting refugees for citizenship, which would include exiting the UN Refugee Convention. And we're a Christian nationalist party, so we've got a policy which, these are long-term policies. Obviously, we're not going to get into power anytime soon, but you have to have your ideas on the website. Mm-hmm. And we would like to make a third of all schools in every borough Christian-themed schools with Bible study part of the curriculum. Also, we've got a ban abortion policy, which was legalised in 1967. We want to go back to the law when it was in 1967. Ban of foreign ownership of land and property, including all of our big football clubs. And we're a Christian British nationalist party who believes in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We reject Zionism, including foreign interest groups in our political parties. Friends of Israel groups, we're opposed to these in our political parties because it's a foreign interest. We want to nationalise gas, electricity, water and the national rail network. We're an anti-globalist party, hence Christian nationalist. We want to leave NATO, the UN, IMF, and we reject the WEF and the WHO. We reject politically correct language, so we don't acknowledge these words like racist, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, homophobic, transphobic, Nazi, fascist, all these words. We don't defend ourselves against them, and we don't call other people these words. We want to scrap the Equalities Act and all hate crime legislation. And we've also got a policy, a white British group identity policy, which means that we want to legalise our identity again, because a lot of people don't realise they've made it illegal for white British group identity to be officially recognised, whether it's a charity, a private business or a political party. And we've also got a policy of no more foreign religious buildings, which includes mosques, temples and synagogues. So that's really what we're all about, and it all started for me. Did you want to interject?
Well, I would like to go into the Christian nationalism aspect, and also there is some recent discussion in the Scottish Parliament about sex-based abortion, so I'd like to go into the abortion as well, but carry on just with how you got into co-founding and then we'll delve a little deeper.
Yeah, okay, so it all started for me in 2012. I'd been observing BNP victories. That's the British National Party. A lot of people know who they are. They're no longer active. And 2012, I finally joined. I built up the courage to join, and did it by accident actually. But so I was in the BNP from 2012 to 2021. And I got to the party late, so to speak. I missed all the glory years, but I was still a very committed activist. I wasn't willing to go public until 2019. And for me, I joined in 2012. 2013, Lee Rigby was killed, and that kind of affirmed I'd done the right thing by joining the party, because everything the BNP warned the country about has happened. And like I said, I kind of got to the party late, and unfortunately, the BNP was destroyed. And in my opinion, the four major things that did that was one, Tommy Robinson, one, Nigel Farage, Julian Assange's WikiLeaks, the membership leak, and the state. So they all worked together, maybe not closely together, but for the same goal of destroying the BNP. And in my opinion, everyone says Tommy Robinson's done good exposing the grooming gangs, but I'd say he's done the opposite, because the BNP was a political party, a big party already in place. They'd won dozens of seats all around the country. They had 2 MEPs, a seat on the London election. It was in place to actually do something about the grooming gangs, and it was the BNP who exposed the grooming gangs. And like I said, Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage, they helped bring it down. So you could say that, that more rapes happened because the BNP was taken down, because it was a perfectly decent vehicle in place to go on and maybe stop this grooming gang scandal.
Right. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So, right. I'm trying to think, because there's a few things you mentioned there that I'd like to go into a little bit more. First off, what would be the era that you would call the BNP glory days, as you put it?
I think it's around 2001 when Nick Griffin took over, and Nick obviously was the person who'd modernised it. And they were more or less like the Front National Rally, Marine Le Pen's party in France. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, the BNP could have been in a position of Marine Le Pen's party now, be in the same position in the UK. But unfortunately, it was attacked and destroyed.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned about notable figures, Farage, Tommy Robinson. You also mentioned Assange. With Tommy Robinson, I have seen him, because obviously people were questioning him about his involvement with the BNP, and he said that he had left because while he agreed with what they were saying about the grooming gangs and the Islamic takeover, as it was put, in sort of 2001 to 2005, in that sort of same time, he claims that he left because black and brown people were not allowed to join the party, because I know that rule changed.
Yeah.
But it seems that Tommy had actually left after that. So was that rule in full effect, or did it maybe not have the intended difference?
The BNP had an all-white British membership criteria, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. However, that policy was changed in 2009, and nobody really knows the real reason, because the state and Tommy and Farage were continually attacking the BNP, so basically saying it's wrong to be British. That's if you're against the BNP, who are fighting for white British group identity and culture to preserve it and protect it, you know, they didn't have any policies to kill anyone or attack anyone. They were a perfectly legal party. And because of the state threatening them that they were going to take them to court because of the Equalities Act, eventually in 2009, they had a vote within the membership of the BNP, and they actually voted to then allow ethnic minorities to join the party. And you know, but even before that, they had support from ethnic minorities like Majinder Singh. He featured in the 2004 election broadcast. He said he's voting BNP. He was the main person at the beginning of the broadcast. And he was happy that he wasn't allowed to join. He understood that it's about preserving British identity, and BNP didn't have a policy at that time to deport anyone who was here legally. Mm-hmm. And so when the membership criteria changed in 2009, and Tommy Robinson and Farage both knew this, but they kept calling the BNP the R word, anti-Semitic, fascist, all these words, which helped bring it down. And
just to interject, I mean, it could be conceived that, I mean, could you understand why people would use these terms when we have, I mean, I know that he wasn't leader of the party at the time, but the BNP was born out of National Front, people like John Tyndall, who was, much more, I'd say, on the extreme. So could you understand how people might see the BNP, instead of being born out of the National Front, just being a continuation of?
Well, let's talk about the National Front. There's also nothing wrong with the National Front. They were doing the same thing as the BNP. They were trying to preserve British identity, British culture, and they were trying to prevent British people becoming a minority.
But they did sit down with members of the KKK.
Well, I don't know anything about that, but the BNP and the National Front were a perfectly legal party, and they didn't have any policies to attack anyone or threaten anyone.
Maybe not direct policies, but I mean, I'm hesitant to use the phrase, but I mean, there were things like bashing, right? Now, these were...
But how's that linked to a political party?
What do you mean?
This term bashing.
Well, it was typically young lads who were supporters of the National Front, obviously what later became the BNP, and there were a lot of attacks and instances of teens jumping other teens for the colour of their skin.
Well, like I say, there's no evidence to prove that they had that policy. They've never had that policy. Neither parties. They're perfectly legal. They're trying to do what everyone's complaining about now. London is now 38% white British. Everyone's angry about it. The BNP and the National Front were both trying to prevent that in a legal and civilised way. And it shouldn't be demonised, but this is the state we are in. Even the grooming gang scandal, the BNP exposed the grooming gang scandal, and you've got GB News, Advance UK, Reform, Tommy Robinson, Paul Golding, Britain First, SDP. They're all still covering it up. 25 years later, they still won't mention the BNP's name. They're ashamed of being British. And this is what happened in Rotherham. You had a BNP elected councillor, Marlene Guest. They won't even mention her name. And so it's still being covered up today, 25 years later, on GB News. All these parties are mentioned because it's basically an anti-white agenda.
So what, do you see it more as like kind of like a credit hog situation? Everyone wants to be named as the saviour who exposed this thing, because it could be that, because, I mean, if people like, I mean, there are certain names that keep coming up. Tommy Robinson, for example. And I'm just choosing him as an example because I know he also has a history with the BNP, whereas, GB News and stuff don't. So he kind of left around the same sort of time that these things were starting to be spoken about. So could it be argued that while he agreed and probably maybe even admired the fact that these issues were being talked about, Islamic gangs and grooming gangs specifically, but disagreed with some of the internal, maybe not even direct policies, but internal behaviours? I mean, just like with, like, there were meetings with the KKK.
Well, I don't know anything about that. I mean, that's the first I've heard, and I can't really comment on that.
I'm just saying, this is why people will have certain perceptions.
Well, what evidence have you got of that?
I can show you a clip after if you like.
Okay.
Nick Griffin spoke at a private meeting of white nationalists in Texas. We've obtained a video of the speech. Beside Mr. Griffin sat David Duke. Mr. Duke is a former leader of the Ku Klux Klan, an organisation with a violent history of lynchings and murders of blacks.
But at the end of the day, it's all guilt by association. It's like what's happening with Tommy, with GB News. They won't let him on there. Tommy supported Farage up until a year ago, and then Farage has thrown him under the bus.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the BNP was just a reflection of the British people. All those girls who were raped, tortured, and some of them killed, they weren't allowed to have a voice. Mm-hmm. And BNP gave them that voice. And even today, like I just mentioned, 25 years later, these organisations, like all the parties I mentioned, GB News, they will not give them credit. They exposed it, and that's why it's still being covered up.
I mean, you could argue that, again, people like Tommy Robinson have been demonised in the same way. Like you said, you don't respond to the politically correct language, accusations
Correct.
of racism, fascist, far right, all of these things. Now, these are things that I get called that. we literally had Richard Tice go on, a member of Reform, go on and say that lot when talking about Tommy Robinson, fans of Tommy Robinson. And we've heard the term far-right bandwagon, racist, fascist thrown around so many times. So it's not necessarily that people aren't facing the same criticism. So do you think that as everyone is facing that criticism, there may have been things within the BNP that warranted extra scrutiny?
Well, firstly, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party used to put homosexuals in prison, and Farage was a member of that. Lots of people were a member of the Conservative Party. No one ever talks about that, you know. But the bottom line is, it's about white British group identity being officially recognised. And Tommy may say, oh, his friend couldn't get in the meeting, right? Which I think is a fake story to start with. So, you know, you either think it's okay to be white British or you don't. If you don't think a political party can have a only white criteria British policy, you think there's something wrong with being white British. Like, if you look at the governments of India, Russia, and you know, China, in their cabinets of their governments, you don't see any women or any different ethnic people. And this is what the BNP was trying to do. They were trying to preserve this country and keep the native population in control if they won the election. But people like Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage, they hammered them with all these politically correct demonisation words and helped bring it down. And like I said, London's now 35% white British. BNP was trying to prevent that in a legal and civilised way, and they should not be demonised. And I'll say it again, they are just a reflection of what happened to the young girls in Rotherham, Rochdale, Oldham. They weren't given a voice. BNP tried to give them a voice, but because BNP represented white British group identity, they were silenced.
I'm not against grouping identity. I mean, well, actually, no, I don't know if I'm against it or for it, because I've seen things where I'm, you know, like they're doing these university courses now, where they're not allowing white students to apply.
It's terrible.
I think that's totally wrong. It'd be wrong the other way around. It'd be wrong whichever way.
Well, the only reason it's terrible is because we can't have a white-only charity. We can have a black. At the moment, you've got a Black Policemen's Association, right? I'm not actually against that, but what I'm against is that white British can't do that. So we're fighting for the rights of any organisation, like whether it's black or Chinese, Indian, whatever, to have specifically for their group of people. That's what you call a free society. What we've got now, not only is it bad that they're trying to force everyone together like a multicultural extremist society, they're trying to do that, but they're denying the white British an identity, you know, a group identity, whereas everyone else is allowed to do it. So it's two bad things there, and our party don't have this policy. We're not seeking to have an all-white British group policy, but we are fighting for the right for somebody else to do it, because, like I said earlier, what people don't realise is they've made us illegal. We're not allowed to be officially recognised as a group of people. And this is completely wrong, and we need to change that around. But like I say, we don't seek that policy, but we're fighting for the right for any other party to do that. I don't think a party with a white British group identity policy will progress, right? I could be wrong, and if it did progress, I would probably join it. I'd probably have to be Christian, because I'm a Christian nationalist. But we are fighting for the right for charities, for white British only, or white English, or white Scottish, or white Welsh, and everyone else as well. Because at the moment, like I said, they're forcing us all together, but everyone else can have their own little associations, and white people can't.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because I mean, on one hand of it, like, yeah, it's one rule for one rule for everyone else. Perfectly fair. I would probably more lean to, well, let's just stop all this tribalism and team playing, and I personally believe in a society where you don't see skin colour, because for me, what I would like to ask you is, where is the line drawn with things like citizenship, and when is someone eligible in your eyes to be considered a British citizen? Is it, you know, third generation, fifth generation, ever? Where is the line for you?
Well, you know, you've got British citizens. and you've got British people. British people are the native people of the British Isles, so that could be English, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, Cornish, anyone from the British Isles. If their ancestors are not from the British Isles, they're not British people, full stop, and they're British citizens if they're here and they're legally. And you know, I'll just let your audience know that I don't agree with permanent settlement immigration. If I was in control in 1945, I would have not let anyone settle here if they weren't British. None, right? The only exception I would give is a marriage, and it would have been minimal if you'd completely stopped immigration. But obviously, as we all know, we've had maybe 20, 25 million foreigners come into our country. They're second, third, fourth, fifth generation now. Our party's not seeking to remove them, and we're not going to have that policy. And, you know, I think if we secure our borders, stop permanent settlement immigration, restore white British identity or white English identity, Welsh, Scottish, we can try and maybe get along, yeah? And potentially I think we could do that. But they are not British people. And if we say they're British people, that means we don't have an identity. And as a Christian nationalist party, Christianity is nationalism, and they talk repeatedly about nations in the Bible. Acts 17:26, God created the borders and etc., the nations, and it's a natural thing for people to group together and mark out their territory. And what has happened to the West in general, I don't think this has ever happened before in history, because it's abnormal what is going on. If you look at the world, there's lots of different countries with borders, and it's taken years for them to fight for those borders. And we've just chucked it all away.
Maybe there is a growing need for, especially when we're seeing things reported in the news of new crimes that are coming out, you know, it's every day now. There maybe is a growing need for a distinction between a British citizen and an English person or a Welsh person or whoever it may be. Because too many times I've seen in the news that the one that almost became a meme was the Yorkshire man that turned out to not be English or British in any way, shape or form. So I do think there is an important distinction between heritage and citizenship, but just in terms of, like, literally, if you were in power right now and you were deciding who got citizenship and who didn't, first, second, third, fourth, fifth generation, where are you drawing the line?
I don't understand the question.
So, for example, if, let's say we have two people come over from Poland and they're already married, they don't have any children, they come over here, they have a baby here, then that baby, who is Polish, marries an English person, then they have children. Right, so what about those two? Basically, I'm asking who is eligible for citizenship in your eyes and who's not? Who would be eligible to be a British citizen and who wouldn't?
Well, I'm not sure what you're really asking me, but I don't agree with any immigration, right, permanent settlement. Obviously, we need to give out temporary work permits, visas and things like that for certain things. But I've been campaigning since 2012 to stop it, to stop giving out British passports to foreigners. Now, like I said earlier, there's a hell of a lot of people coming and settled second, third, fourth generation, depending on if they married a native. Like, John Lawrence, his mum married a Jamaican. Half his bloodline is British. Half his bloodline is from the British Isles. I think it's mainly English and a bit of Irish. But if there's no bloodline from the British Isles, they're not British people. It's like they're British citizens, right? They're still going to have the same rights as it is now. That's the situation. But they're not British people. They're not British blood. So, for example, I've got a friend. He's a Nigerian. He's born here, and he identifies as Nigerian. He was born here. He's fairly integrated. He has an England flag on his wall in the World Cup, but he doesn't call himself English. I'm happy for people to support our flag, whether it's the Union but it's not their flag. If you really look into it, it's our flag. Because if we say anyone can be British, we don't have an identity. And I think we spoke before about China. If I went to China with my white English wife and I had kids there, they're not going to be Chinese, are they?
Well, yeah, but this is me. I've made this argument when I've just been, out and debating with people, and I have used that exact example. And I've said, if I married a British man and then we went and lived in China, settled there, and we had a baby there, that baby would not be Chinese. However, where the line for me starts to get blurry is if my English child then went and married a Chinese person and had babies with them, and then they married off Chinese people and then had babies with them. Some way down the line, they stop becoming English and start becoming Chinese.
Well,
even though there is a distant heritage.
What you just described there, if you had that child and that child had children with a native Chinese person, obviously they've now married into that nation.
Yeah. So if it was the other way around, if that was Britain, let's say, go back to the example of the Polish family. Let's say two Polish people come, they have children. So one of them's Polish, and then they marry an English person, and then they have children, right? If this couple, the middle couple, the one Polish person marries into the English to the English person, if they then split up, but obviously they've been here for he was actually born here and has children here, would you then agree that he should stay in the country or should be deported?
Well, I don't know why we're even discussing this, because I've never campaigned to deport legally settled migrants, ever.
Well, no, but because there's this whole conversation about stopping giving out citizenship. So that makes me wonder that people who have been given citizenship that you might not agree with, if you were to be in power, would you revoke citizenship? I suppose is what I'm asking.
Well, I think once people are born in a nation and they've got that citizenship, it's not that I'd be upset if they just tomorrow 10 million migrants just disappeared out who had been born here and they disappeared out of the country. But it's politically, it's not practical. So if someone isn't born here, that's a different story. Like you can argue that, well, you weren't born here, so it's very easy to maybe deport that sort of people. But once people are born here, second, third, fourth generation, I just think... I'm not saying the people who are calling for it are retards, but for a political message, it's retarded.
Yeah, so it's like at that point, the melting pot has melted.
Yes. Yeah. It's just, it's off the table in my opinion. But it doesn't mean that I agreed with it happening in the first place. I'm not going to say to people, that's another thing about Tommy. He thinks multiculturalism is great. I've heard him say it loads of times. It's just the Muslims. And he wants to blame the Muslims for all the problems, all the immigration problems of our country. It's not just the Muslims, And we don't try and pick on one group. I will say we don't want any more mosques built, synagogues, Sikh temples or Hindu temples built. Didn't want any of them here in the first place, but obviously they're here now, and we've got to try and do some work together to kind of in a positive direction, and which I think we can do, because I go out door knocking all the time, and all the immigrants, they've been born here, but they're not British people. They want immigration stopped, especially the Muslims. They want immigration stopped. And they don't want any more refugees coming in the country. Yeah. And this is another thing about our party. We don't go around saying illegals, because last year 120,000 people were given asylum and only 40,000 of them came in through Dover. So all the people in the hotels, everyone keeps saying they're illegals. They don't know where they could have come from. Refugee camps in Syria or Iraq or Eritrea, Iran. Could have, all these systems we're signed up to through the United Nations Refugee Convention. It all needs to stop. It needs to be abandoned.
On the asylum seeker hotels, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and recently the government is discussing lowering spending on foreign aid. I think they're considering lowering it to about 863 million. I might have to correct myself on that, but I think it's around that. And loads of people are saying, that's utter pittance when you look at it on the grand scale of things. Do you think that things like the 7 billion a year that we're spending on asylum seeker hotels, all of the money and resources that it costs to process people, have all these things happening on the border because people are going to retrieve the boats, then the boats are being sent back. There is so much money being spent everywhere, but it's all in-house, and yet it's not being classed as foreign aid. Do you think it should be?
Well, I don't agree with foreign aid anyway. I think it's bribery, and it's, we're part of the Zionist globalist elite, not us, but our government, Lib Lab Con reform as well, in my opinion. And, they want to stay in NATO. and they give all this money to India, Pakistan, all these. So when a military thing happens in that area of the globe, they say like, well, this is how we're going to sort this out. This is what my view of it is, and if they don't agree, then the foreign aid's going to stop, isn't it? Because you don't just give people a load of money for nothing. There's always a catch, and that's what. But in terms of the asylum disaster our country's in, and all that money you said what's been spent, yeah, it's well, our policy is to completely stop accepting refugees for citizenship, because that's the root of the problem. The reason we've got an open door at Dover is because of the UN Refugee Convention. None of them are breaking the law. That's why they're queuing up to flood across, because they know they're not going to be arrested. They're going to claim asylum, and they're going to be put in these hotels and with our money, and it's disgusting. But we need to get the public to vote to stop that first, for the public to agree, yes, we need to stop accepting refugees. Not talking about illegals all the time. We need to take that option off the table so they cannot claim asylum. And then when they turn up, it will be illegal, and you detain them until they get their papers and they've got to go.
Just to interrupt for 2 seconds, everyone, I'd like to remind you all that clean skincare should never mean compromise. For years we trusted the big skincare brands, most of which are actually tied to Big Pharma and have such long ingredient names on the back of the pack that you cannot even pronounce them, let alone know what they really are. So that's why I'm so proud to tell you guys about our new sponsor, Forticare, a completely British-made tallow skincare line dedicated to keeping things natural. Not only do they have multiple scents to choose from when it comes to face and body moisturizers, they also have a completely natural sun cream. And if you go on their website to look at the selection, you can get 20% off your first order if you use the code SPEAKFreely. So what might some other policies look like under Christian nationalism? We've mentioned, so we've talked through deportations, which to me seems like very similar to another Christian nationalist party, which is UKIP, headed by Nick Tenconi. Now that they position themselves as a Christian nationalist party, he's said those words.
Yeah, I've heard him say it lots of times.
Now, on deportations, it's a lot of the same sort of wording, but in practicality, well, I suppose not in practicality because none of this has been carried out, but thinking about how this would actually be practically done, it seems to be you're much more, harsher on it. Would you see Tenconi's position on immigration and deportation weak?
Well, I think his deportation rhetoric is just a fantasy, and not only would it be difficult to deport second, third generation people, right? He's talking about deporting indigenous British people because they're communist. Where in the hell is he going to be sending these people? People don't realise you need to find a country who's going to take them. And I've said this to people before, if you've got a sex offender in Thailand who gave up their British citizenship and then he was in prison for 40 years, so he's got no more British citizenship, no passport, the Thai government, he's finished his sentence, they say, right, we want to send him back to you now. If I'm the leader, I'm going to say, we don't want him. We don't want a paedophile in our country. He's just been done 40 years for whatever. So Tenconi is lots of flaws in his argument and message. I mean, one of the biggest ones is he keeps saying he wants to deport loads of people who are not integrated, and the people who are most not integrated are the Jewish community in Stamford Hill. Now, just make it clear, I'm not asking for any settled migrants to be deported, but if he wants to deport people who are not integrated, the Jewish community in Stamford Hill, they won't even get on the bus with us. That is how separate they are living from us. Muslims do whatever, black people do whatever. They got a fleet of hundreds of minibuses they drive around because they will not mix even on London transport with us.
Right.
And
so I don't think I've spent any time in Stamford Hill. Maybe I should go try and do some interviews there. That might be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's just ridiculous what he's saying, and they're not nationalists. They're phony nationalists, and my definition of a nationalist, if you think it's okay to invite a foreigner into your country and give them your passport of your nation, if you think that's okay, you're not a nationalist. It's just that's the defining line for me. And in the UKIP policy, it clearly says they want to integrate more immigrants into our country and give them passports. That's not nationalism. That's one example where they're not nationalists, we are. Another Christian nationalism, we're against abortion. We've just released a new policy about abortion that, since 1967, we've lost an estimated 20 million Indigenous British people in this country to abortion. Because the official figures for the actual abortion, I think, is around 11 million. Mm. But if all those people had children as well, when they grew up, you're talking 20 million people. Mm. This is a Holocaust against the Indigenous British people. And, if you haven't got that on your website that you want to stop that, you're not really a Christian nationalist, in my opinion.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, abortion is something that I really want to delve a bit deeper into. It was a couple of days ago, I was just scrolling through X, in fact, I think it was, my train had been cancelled, I was on my way to a protest, and I went on X, and I saw that in Scotland they are re-looking at whether it should be legal to have a sex-based abortion. Obviously, meaning if I was pregnant and found out that I was having a boy and I decided that I really, really, really wanted a girl, I would be given the option to abort that baby just because I didn't want a boy. Now, that to me just seems nothing short of demonic. Mm-hmm. And interesting, just on the rates of abortion, it was when they were decriminalising women who abort past the 24-week limit. And I'd posted about it, and Father Calvin Robinson had replied in a tweet and said, more people have been killed by abortion in the world, this is globally, than all of the world wars combined. Mm-hmm. And I fact-checked it, because I'll admit, I was like, that can't be right, surely not. It's right. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely terrifying. And I feel like if a lot more people knew that, that would really put things into perspective, because I do see everyone gets tied up in the whole Israel-Palestine thing. To me, the biggest genocide happening right now is the mass killing of unborn children.
I agree.
And especially with the possibility of sex-based abortions, that's also something that we would particularly see in countries run by Sharia law, because obviously they want more male heirs, less females. So I was just wondering if I could first just get your reaction to that, and then I would like to delve into how this compares to UKIP's policies on abortion.
So yeah, we completely against abortion, and the only exception is in our policy is if the woman's life is in danger,
right,
during a pregnancy. But the church I started to go to, because I was a bit sceptical about not giving abortions for people who've been raped, but after someone explained it to me that, look, it's not the child's fault. They're not the criminal. The rapist is the criminal. That's number one. Number two, the child can be adopted. Obviously it's going to not be a good situation for the mother, but also the child could grow up to be a world famous person. Could be Liberace, or there is a story somewhere, I can't remember what it is, but someone was supposed to be aborted and they wasn't, and they're a household name basically. And we are of the opinion that abortion should not be about. And another thing about rape is if you allow it for rape, all a woman has to say is I was raped, and they can just get an abortion. And we're in an emergency at the moment. Like, it's about 1.6 people having children at the moment, which is our population is shrinking, and we're going to be extinct unless we sort this out. So the number one thing we've got to do is make abortion illegal. That's what's on our
See, because
website.
I, as a woman, I do have some, I guess some people would call choice views on abortion, and it's definitely been a developing view for me. I mean, I went through all of high school being what I would now describe as a lefty, being all pro-choice and everything like that, and before I kind of broke out the indoctrination system. And I mean, even when they were discussing, and now have passed, that women will no longer be criminalised if they abort beyond 24 weeks. Not only that, they said that the doctor, if they performed abortion beyond 24 weeks, they would still be liable. To me, that makes it a direct advocacy to go and have what we would call back alley abortions, do-it-yourself abortions, right? Mm. Most of these would be with pills that are only meant for abortions up to 11 weeks. This can result in an incomplete abortion, which is obviously as horrible as it sounds. Mm. Where I start to get a bit hesitant is rape and girls that are underage. And, you know, obviously in some horrible instances, those two things will be combined, right? So, and my thing is when introducing or when discussing a policy, in order for it to work, it must ideally work for the most awkward of situations and circumstances. And I do understand that, yeah, if a woman is raped, it's horrific. It is not the baby's fault. It's not the mother's fault. But at the end of the day, it is the mother who's going to have to put her body through this. And just to push back slightly on the idea that, you know, a woman could just go, oh, I was raped, and then she can get an abortion. There are things to stop that from being so willy-nilly, like DNA testing on the baby itself, residual sperm, you know, things like that, injuries, because if they manage to get to the point where they manage to impregnate them, there is likely going to be some kind of physical mark on the body. So I think there are ways to get around that, and it would be quite rare occasions that could happen. But what would you suggest about minors? And this is for not only just, let's say, a minor that's been raped, but a minor that has, I don't know, let's say, you know, 15-year-olds and 14-year-olds are having sex these days. It's disgusting, but this is the world we're living in, unfortunately. What if they were using a condom and it broke? And she got pregnant, she's 15, 16, she's got a whole life ahead of her, her body might not even be able to cope with it. What would you suggest in that situation?
Well, I think if we go back to the 1960s, when that was the law, that they would have had to have the child. I'm not sure about that specific circumstances, but at the end of the day, nature is nature, and human beings can have children when they're 14, 15, and, you know, obviously it's not the law in this country, but like I say, in 1960s, that was the law, and people, you know, obviously people did, but most people wouldn't have sex before marriage. And
I agree with that. A lot of this is to do with the issues around matrimony. I do agree with that.
Yeah. And having strong family units, you know, like families going to be disappointed if they have certain partners or they're not getting married, and we need Christianity back. That is the solution, because that's what made the strong. Christianity creates big families, and big families demand strong borders for protection. And you know, our population is being destroyed, and abortion is what's done it, really. And everyone goes on about we're being replaced, which we are, but that's the main part of it, is the abortion. Like I said, maybe 20 million people we're missing on these islands. So yeah, I mean, we've spoke about it in our party and stuff, and that's what we came up with. And we feel that if we're a Christian nationalist party, we're against abortion, we need to have a policy about it. So that's what we decided to do. Yeah.
The only thing I can think of is, like, you know, pre-1967, it was kind of, there was a rise in back alley abortions because of the limitations on the options that a woman had if there was an unwanted pregnancy. Not necessarily agreeing, I'm just, from a practical standpoint, if you were to get into power, you ban abortion, back alley abortions start coming on the rise again, what would be the solution to that? Because, I mean, to a certain extent, you can make anything illegal. People are going to find a way to do it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I can't really answer that question because, you know, it's a hypothetical, but, you know, whatever they dealt with it back then, I think our country was pretty good just after World War II, you know, didn't have any immigration, you know, we had a strong Christian society, but it was attacked deliberately, our Christian heritage. You know, they got, you know, legalised abortion, legalised divorce, legalised same-sex marriage and all this stuff. And, you know, the communists, their first target, it's our Christian faith. That's the first target, because they know that's the strongest thing, what binds the society together. And ultimately they want to take it over. And they have taken it over, to be honest. But I think things are going to be changing in the next few years. I mean, I think there's a revival going on. So a hell of a lot of people are, you know, turning to the Christian faith again. And I think that's a positive thing for our nation.
So would you refer to Tenkoni as a Christian nationalist, or?
No.
What would you?
So I'll give you 4 points, right? What the difference between his party and our party. Number one is identity. They say that an African person who was born here is British, a British person. We've already been through that,
Yep.
and you sort of agreed with me that that's not really correct. So that's one phony policy they've got. The other one is Zionism. Any proper Christian who's intelligent can know that Jews who reject Jesus as our Lord and Saviour, they should not own the Holy Land. They're only using the Old Testament. They're ignoring the New Testament. Christians follow the New Testament, and it's not their land, because Jesus Christ was sent to earth, and we are all now Israel. Jews and Gentiles who accept Jesus are Israel.
So just to clarify, because obviously, I mean, especially with what's going on in the media at the moment, people hear the word Zionist and immediately it becomes, understandably, becomes conflated with you're either pro-Israel or you're pro-Palestine. Am I right in understanding that you're not coming from those angles, you're coming from a Christian angle?
Correct. We're
Right.
we're a UK first party, and we're not going to be given Nigeria unconditional support.
Right.
So why should people give Israel unconditional support? That's what's going on with all of our governments. They're controlled by the Zionist influence, financial, media, and they've literally forced us into another war in Gaza. They're spending our tax money on British military supporting Israel, and they're not even speaking about it, not even asking us, is it okay? They've been supporting them through the war crimes they were committing in Gaza, all the way through with British military, and our party thinks it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And there's a massacre's just happened, and so we're not Zionist, and UKIP are, and
Right.
if you can't be a proper Christian and be a Zionist, because you're supporting people who reject Jesus. It's as simple as that.
Mm.
And I did have another couple of things.
Yeah.
Identity. So they say African people who are born here can be British. We say that's not correct. We're not saying they're bad people. Like this woman, Based Boogie, whatever her name is, yeah.
Based and bougie.
Oh, Based and Bougie.
Based and bougie.
Based and Bougie. She could be a very nice girl, right?
She is lovely.
Right. Well, I don't know her, but you say she's lovely, and I'll take your word for it, right? She's a British citizen of whatever heritage she is. Yeah, it's not that she's a bad person, but she's not a British person, and that's how we see it. UKIP don't see it like so. We're trying to preserve our identity. UKIP are just letting it be thrown away. So that's another phony policy they've got. Abortion, that's not on their. They literally say on their website they leave it up to the individual to have an abortion or not.
But Tenkoni said that he wouldn't ban abortion, but he would take the limit back to 20 weeks, which I'll admit was a shock to me because, and again, as a woman, I think that the limit should be around 12 weeks because it's beyond 12 weeks that if you have a natural miscarriage, it's actually considered a late miscarriage. But before the 12-week point, that's when you expect to have a miscarriage, and you actually told, like it's an old wives' tale, don't tell anyone you're pregnant until you're 12 weeks. So I think that would be a reasonable cut-off. So I'll admit, I was surprised to hear Tenkoni's late limit.
Yeah, and so a Christian nationalist should be, kind of orthodox in most things. So there's 4 things: immigration, they want more immigration into the country, give them out more passports; identity, Zionism, and abortion. There's 4 quite big policy differences there.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between us and them.
So you briefly mentioned just in the use of a metaphor Nigeria, and it got me thinking about the plight of the Nigerian Christians. And obviously this isn't just a one-off, it's happening in so many countries all around the world. Now, I don't know if maybe this would be combining your Christian mind and your political mind. Maybe it would need to be, separate ideals. But where would you stand on offering asylum and maybe even citizenship to people who are being persecuted in other countries for their genuine Christian faith?
Yeah, so we have a policy of no more asylum seekers, full stop. Doesn't matter where they're from. We don't agree with giving citizenship to foreigners. In an ideal world, if we wasn't in the position we are now with this crisis, we are literally being invaded by asylum seekers. In an ideal world, asylum seekers should be helped, right? Temporarily. I mean, we've got a statement on our website, which is nationalhousingparty.uk. If you go to the front page, you'll see our refugee statement. And it basically says, in an ideal world, there should be refugee camps. So if they come in, you put them in a refugee camp. You never give them citizenship, and when their country's better, you don't let them mix with the population, and then when their country's okay, they can go back. And this will prevent fraudsters, because it's not going to be fun being in a refugee camp. But if it's going to save your life, you're going to do it, aren't you? So in an ideal world, that should be the situation. But because we've given citizenship, which we disagree with, we've given citizenships to so many, it's like probably over 2 million now, over the years since the 50s, 60s. Because of all the resources they've drained, all the housing and all this stuff, we're trillions in debt as a nation. We are not in a position to even temporarily help asylum seekers anymore.
Yeah.
We need to put UK first, and that's our position on that. But like I said, in an ideal world, but this is the problem with the United Nations Refugee Convention. This came in 1951, and they basically got the whole world to sign up to this thing, which says they can turn up at your shores with no documents. You have to treat them not as a criminal. And this is why a lot of people, they're mistaken. They keep calling them illegals. They're not breaking any laws because of the UN Refugee Convention. And it says you must let them in your country and give them the full rights as your citizens already here, and let them stay there for life. And what they've done is what's happened is they've given one refugee more rights than a whole nation. This is what's happened. And this is why we always keep mentioning the UN Refugee Convention.
Yeah.
And I stand in local elections. We're a small party, and I understand that, if I get elected as a local councillor, I'm not going to be able to stop immigration because I wouldn't have the power to do it. I would like to. But I can, and I have said on all my leaflets, Camden people first for housing. I stand in Camden, and I can be on the council saying no, we don't want any more refugees being housed in Camden, because they made Camden a refugee borough of sanctuary for refugees. They've done it in a lot of boroughs, and Wales has done it, and all these places. We've got 30,000 people waiting for council flats, and they made us a borough of sanctuary for refugees. It's insane, and we need to be vocal about it. We mustn't keep saying we're against illegals. We don't want any more refugees. That's how they're getting in. That's the system they're using to get in, and that's what we've got to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's definitely there's unnecessary spending going on. The priorities are all wrong. We have so many people, British people, homeless on the streets, including veterans. I mean, Crisis Homelessness Charity said that with about 1.9 billion a year indefinitely, they could completely eradicate homelessness in the UK. And yet, as we said earlier, we're spending 7 billion a year on asylum seeker hotels, and yet we seem to have no problem affording that. So definitely, there is 100% an issue here. And even with genuine asylum seekers and genuine refugees that are coming here for safety, to a certain extent, as much as you want to, you can't help everyone when you can't help yourself, right? I've used this analogy so many times, and I will never not use it. It would be like me inviting you into my home when I've got holes in my walls, no electricity, no food, and then allowing you to move your family in, and then allowing you to rearrange my furniture to your liking.
Correct.
Right? That's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Completely agree. However, just to play devil's advocate, and we use the example of if we were living in a perfect world, in the instances that if we were living in a perfect world, ideally refugees should be helped. But then you said even in that circumstance, it shouldn't be indefinitely. It should be
Correct.
kept separate from British society and then sent back when whatever's going on in their country has come to an end.
Correct.
The issue with that, and how I was wondering how you would get around, is obviously human lifespan and the lifespan of a war, for example, in the Middle East. The Middle East has never not been at war, you know. What would we do in those circumstances? Because then we literally have no opportunity, if they are genuine Christians, if they are genuinely fleeing persecution, these places are still at war, have been at war for hundreds of years, and will probably be at war for a few more 100 years. So what do these people do?
Well, there's conflicts all over the world. There's a lot of conflicts going on we probably don't even know about. And, I've explained the situation we're in. We're trillions in debt. We're in a housing crisis. We've helped enough refugees.
Oh, yeah, I just meant this would be because you mentioned in an ideal world, we would help refugees.
Yeah,
which
temporarily. And they would go in the refugee camp. They'd get shelter. They'd be fed. They would be safe from being killed. And
then they'd get sent back to their country to be killed.
Well, if their countries still at war,
Yeah.
they can find another country to go to, and it might be similar ethnicity to them.
Right.
But for example, the Huguenots came here as refugees, and they're very similar people, blah blah blah. But ideally, even in Europe, you shouldn't be giving citizenship to foreigners. That's just me. I'm a nationalist, and that's why Europe is so powerful and so successful, because of the competitiveness of all the different nations, and that's why we have borders. And they try to make it all one thing with the European Union, the United Nations Refugee Convention. They've basically tried to do an open border communist assault on the whole world.
Yeah, this whole no borders, no nations thing.
No identity. And but going back to the Zionism thing, I explained why we don't support Israel from a Christian point of view, but just from a normal point of view, if you wasn't particularly religious or whatever. Zionism has destroyed the West, and they've got us into continued wars, which has sparked a lot of these refugees into Europe. And Epstein Island, I believe Mossad was behind that. 9/11, which triggered all these wars in the Middle East, what you mentioned. That's all from 9/11, and I've looked into that, and it's very suspicious. And I think Mossad are the prime suspects for that operation. They allowed it to happen to then persuade the Western powers, America, UK, France, to invade all those Middle Eastern countries around Israel, which were a threat to Israel, because most of those countries, Libya, Syria, Iraq, they wouldn't allow the international banksters into their country. They were called Basque, I think. Not Basque. They're like social nationalists or something. What's the name of it? I can't remember the name of it. But they basically had their own banks, and Israel saw them as a threat because they was all dictators, and they wanted them gone. And who got rid of them? We did. Then we get the blame because they're illegal wars. Everyone hates us for it. We have to take all the refugees in. We're trillions in debt, and this is all because of Israel, in my opinion. So, and it's all happening in America. Like, there's a massive divide happening now. Marjorie Greene Taylor, whatever her name is, Nick Fuentes, Candice Owens, Massey. There's a big group of them now going against Trump because Trump is he's not America first.
Well, there's this whole thing going on with, like you mentioned, the Epstein files. It's almost like everyone is the cat and the Epstein files are the bacon, and it just keeps getting waved, and then, oh, no, you can't have it. Oh, no, you can't have it. That's definitely how it feels. And I mean, yeah, it's been well, I suppose it has been a secret, but if you look a little bit deeper, it's been no secret that nothing we're told is the truth. Modern warfare isn't drones and guns and boots on the ground. It's information and it's finance. I mean, how many millions of billions of pounds and dollars have been sent from the West to directly fund terrorist groups like ISIS and the Taliban? I mean, that came out, I think it was when Biden was in power, it came out that there was a good chunk that had just gone.
Who was just in the White House? Jelani. He was the deputy head of ISIS in Syria and Iraq. And didn't you know?
No, to be fair, I mostly try and focus on home politics.
Yeah. So he's just taken over Syria, and he's the leader. And he used to be. There was a $5 million bounty on his head, and now he's in the White House shaking hands with Trump, and he was ISIS. And because the Zionists funded ISIS, because they're trying to get rid of the Shias, the Iranians, and they're worried the Iranians are going to take over the Middle East because they won't cooperate with Israel. This is all international stuff anyway, but I mean, for me, it's all about local politics really. But at the same time, our country's a globalist country, and they've run our country for so long now, these Zionist people, and it's not done us any favours at all.
Well, I mean, everything, it doesn't necessarily, to a certain point, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about corruption on a local level, on an elite level. It all still is coming from the same pot. But speaking of politics and elections and things like that, would you like to outline, your hopes and how you're feeling about these upcoming local elections?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier on, we started a party to take part in local elections, and I learnt all my stuff in the BNP. But just quickly on the BNP, Zionism destroyed the BNP, which could have saved the country. Also, Jeremy Corbyn, who I don't like, they also destroyed his political aspirations because he didn't accept Israel and stuff. So, you know, we created the party after the BNP fell away, and basically I've been campaigning in my ward. I'm standing in a place called Holborn and Covent Garden. Everyone will know those areas, and it's a Labour stronghold. And the Labour Council, which is just unheard of, they cannot find enough candidates. They put it in the local paper. They can only find 48 candidates. They need 55 for Camden. In my ward, there's 3 candidates. And this is unprecedented. So the Labour Party are banging trouble, and I think I've got a good chance of getting a good result. They've also just released another thing in the paper that the head of the council, so the top guy in Labour Party, Camden Council, because they run the council, they're going to put him in my ward, my election, because they think that ward is a safe place. Because, you know, you always put your top guy in the most safest place, don't you, so you don't lose. But I think they're going to get a shock because, you know, I go knocking on doors every week and I speak to all the public, all the Muslims, all the Africans, all the English. There's a sizable amount of English left. They're my most passionate voters. You know, but I get on with all the people, and they all want immigration stopped. They're happy I'm a Christian, and they don't want any more refugees being housed before them. The stories I hear, I mean, my friend, this is one story I always tell, he lived in my block of flats and he slept on his mum's sofa for 30 years.
30 years?
30
years.
years.
Must have had a sore back.
In the front room, on the sofa, and he phoned up Camden, can you get me a flat? No, we haven't got any. Can you put me on a waiting list? No. Because he's a straight guy with a job, basically. So, you know, and I'm hearing this story all the time, and the ethnic minorities in my area, they literally hate Labour. And so the guy who is one of the standing councillors, who's my councillor, who I don't get on with, a Somalian man, he's now thrown the towel in because he must know that they're going to lose. Because I'm not saying I'm going to win, but it's, you know, also Reform's going to be standing. I don't like Reform, but they're probably definitely going to be standing there. And I'm hoping they only have one candidate, which will be good for me, but who knows, they may get 3 candidates. But so this Somalian councillor, he's thrown the towel and said he's not going to stand. And I think the reason he's done that is because they're getting messages all the time talking about me, saying this guy's knocking on doors all the time, like, because they'll get the messages like that. I've probably knocked on a lot of people he personally knows.
Oh, yeah.
And so the Labour Party's probably said to him, you've got to get out there, start knocking on doors.
Do something.
And Labour, they can't knock on doors. They get told to piss off. And this is my theory, maybe why he's given up. I mean, who knows? So, yeah, I'm going to have a good chance. And I've put a solid campaign in already. There's only 6 months to go. And, you know, I'm a strong believer. If you start a party, you know, the leading members have got to really be in the trenches, standing in the elections to encourage other people, because that's the only way you're going to get off the ground. It's just, I mean, I was shocked to know, someone said to me the other day, Advance UK, they're not going to stand in local elections. I just can't believe that's true, because someone said, they've said they're just going to do the general election. You can't win a parliamentary seat if you've got no local support in that area.
Yeah, no, that seems somewhat
can't
unreliable.
Be true, but maybe someone in the comments can clarify that.
But then, I mean, you know, we are in a politically, especially, we are in a very fast-changing world. I mean, we have seen such a huge and quick shift to fringe parties now that, who knows, anything's up for grabs at this point.
The dream thing in my election, there would be 3 Green candidates, 3 Liberal Democrats, 3 Labour, and then 3 National Housing Party, and 1 Reform, because you got a chance to put 3 in if you want. Right. That would be the ideal situation, because the Liberal Democrats and the Greens are going to split the Labour vote, and that would give me a very good chance of potentially winning. And, you know, I'll be thanking Jesus if that happens. And
just to finish up, just let everyone know where they can find you, where they can look at your website, if they want to support any campaigns.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Emma. I really appreciate it.
Right,
really enjoyed the chat. And think you've got a good thing going here, the He Speaks Freely podcast.
Thank you.
And you can find us nationalhousingparty.uk. That's our website. We've got multiple members on Twitter, Facebook. Just put in National Housing Party. The account I use on Twitter, which I'm very disappointed at the moment about Twitter X, the algorithms. I mean, I've got 61,000.
A lot of people are saying this.
I've got 61,000 followers, and I'm lucky to get 10 likes on a post, and I can't be that bad at posting. I mean, if I've managed to get 61,000 followers, you know. So my X account is at official NHP UK, and there's NHP UK leader, that's John Lawrence, Paul Rimmer, and there's a few others. We've got 2 YouTube channels. NHP UK Press Office, that's the one I run, and then you've got John's one, which is NHP UK TV. And we're quite closely connected to the PTSD camp in Bath, which helps veterans, homeless veterans and things like that. So
lovely.
Go and help them if you can, and God bless our veterans, and Christ is King.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, it's been great having you on. Obviously, we agree on a lot of things, we disagree on some things, but I've thoroughly enjoyed having you on, so thank you for coming.
Thank you.